I'm what you might call a lapsed Halo fan. It was easily the most important franchise to my young life. Like so many people born in the first half of the 90s. But I eventually just kind of started to feel burned by 343 Studios slash Halo Studios. I'm going to use them interchangeably here. They're the same thing. And I kind of thought I just was done at some point. But I recently got a freelance opportunity to write up a walkthrough for IGN, of all places. You can actually check that out on their wiki right now if you want some solo legendary advice from me personally. Um, but I was just so familiar with the game that I thought it would be a fun assignment. It would be good to go through it again, and I enjoy helping people play things that I like. It's what I enjoyed about doing guides for as long as I've had them. Plus, I thought if nothing else, it would be fun to just see how perverted it would feel to play as Master Chief using a DualSense controller. And I started out with the bonus missions, the thing that I was probably the least excited to see in this remake when it originally got announced, because I just wanted to see the scope of them. I needed to know how big they were going to be so that I could tackle them for guides and things like that. And I was just completely and totally blown away by them off the rip. I knew immediately that this was going to be something that connected with me after, 10, 20 minutes of that first level. It made me remember what I loved about Halo when I was a kid and what I've been missing for so long. So I'm going to just yap about that for a little bit and talk about kind of Campaign Evolved, excuse me, not Combat Evolved. It's the remake of Combat Evolved. Campaign Evolved, kind of what it is, largely my thoughts on it, just kind of off of some notes that I have here, but really focusing on those bonus missions, because I feel like that is the thing here that is not just worth the price of entry, but if you are like me and if just felt like, I don't know, man, about the most recent Halo stuff, I think you might find something here that you've been missing. So Campaign Evolved, if you are unaware, is the Unreal Engine 5 version of Combat Evolved. Basically, if you, years ago at this point, Halo Studios came out and said, we're going to switch Halo over to Unreal from the Blam engine, which it had been on for a long time, and just try our hand at this Unreal Engine thing that everyone is talking about. There's a reason for that. If people want me to get into like why they're moving to Unreal after all of this time on Blam, I would be happy to do an analytical video about that, but I don't think this is the place for it. And basically they were like, the first project they announced in this new Unreal initiative was Campaign Evolved, which is a full remake of Combat Evolved for the 25th anniversary, and also includes 3 completely new prequel missions starring everyone's favorite big man, John Halo, and Sergeant Major Johnson, as well as a co-op companion. But not in co-op. He's just an ally that hangs out with you and shoots stuff with the big sniper. And the idea is this takes place a couple years, I think exactly a year, before the Pillar of Autumn is attacked by the Covenant above Installation 04 that starts off this whole Halo saga. And I thought that is the last. I scoffed, I think, audibly, alone in my office when they announced that they would be doing this. Probably like a dick, because to me, Halo Studios has just not been it when it's come to stewarding this franchise that I really care about. Jake the Alright and I do a show on my channel called The Wonder Twins Business Hour. And the first episode, we talked about the cancellation of a bunch of Halo projects and kind of where 343 has been going wrong for us, especially me. I seem more pessimistic about the whole thing. But Jake said something I really appreciated and enjoyed, which is that it feels like 343 and Halo Studios has always had this "my older brother went to Harvard" syndrome, where it feels like they've constantly been trying to like one-up it or change it or figure something out or jump in there and put their unique spin on it to make Halo theirs, to basically like audition for a job that they've already had. And I think largely that has felt unsuccessful. I don't think it was successful with the Forerunner enemies and that whole move in that direction in Halo 4. I don't think it was successful at all with the squad-based gameplay in 5. I think Infinite was such a departure from the franchise that it actually ended up working out really well, and I really enjoyed it. But then they did the whole thing where they came out with the campaign, people liked it, thought this is pretty cool, this could be the future of Halo, and then they went, oh, actually, we're not doing anything else like this anymore. We need to go fix our multiplayer that we really goofed up. Don't worry, we'll finish the story in a book. And so I was just like, I was just done. But these missions feel like a 3-4. If 343 before was like my older brother went to college and I have a complex about it, it feels like now they're in their 30s and like my older brother went to Harvard and I'm really proud of him. You know, things really worked out. He's a cool dude. I'm lucky to be related to such a cool guy, and it feels like they, instead of trying to reinvent something that was working, and I don't want to make it seem like innovation is bad. We need innovation. Bungie innovated plenty in their own time with the series, but I think it was just nice to see in this case that it felt like Halo Studios went in with this thinking, can we possibly make it feel like we're remastering old lost levels from the original trilogy instead of like we're making something new in 2026. And I think they nail that. They really managed to hit that perfect identity of something that feels like it takes place in a different time, like it's a new thing, missions you've never played before, but in the style of what Bungie did so successfully for the 13 years or whatever that they had Halo, that they were stewarding it. And it just really ended up working out very well for me, because it doesn't just feel like like Combat Evolved. It doesn't just feel like Halo 1 rehash. I don't think these levels feel necessarily entirely like they would be pulled out of Combat Evolved. They feel like they would be pulled out of multiple different places in the Bungie Halo universe. So there are parts in the second level that really feel like Reach to me, and then there are other aspects, a lot of aspects in that second level that feel a lot like Halo 3. The first levels is very Halo 1 and Halo 2, partially because it uses some of that Halo 1 architecture from the Truth and Reconciliation, which makes sense because you're on a big Covenant flagship. It makes sense that in that era, all of those things would look similar. And so you have that Halo 1 feeling of, 6 levels in that game are running through the same environments multiple times. So you have that feeling of like familiarity that occasionally hits you with, this is new, this is interesting, this is unique, and then pulls you back to, but we're still just on a Covenant ship from this time. In a pre-flood era where nobody knows what that is yet, this is a fun experiment that you're having. But then also you have weapons, best of hit weapons from other places in the series, so it immediately does not feel like Halo 1 when you load in and you pull up a battle rifle. And it starts to feel admittedly a little bit like Reach when you find a needle rifle, which is extremely overpowered in Legendary, by the way. When you get your hands on one of those things, it's wild how good it is. In an otherwise, like, honestly very challenging setup. They did a good job of making missions that are long and pretty hard on Legendary. There's one particular checkpoint in that second level that I think is probably the hardest solo Legendary checkpoint in the original. I mean, I know it's not part of the original three games plus Reach, but it feels like it is. And I think it's probably one of the hardest. Those are the games I've played on solo Legendary, and it is easily up there with stuff like the gondola ride in Halo 2 in terms of just how difficult it is. I was stuck on it for quite some time, which I genuinely really appreciated. It made me feel like I was back doing caring enough to go through and take that time to do the solo Legendary to challenge myself. And it just, by the time I was done with it, it felt like they could have said it was 6 levels, and that it could have cut both of those in half, and they took, or all 3 of those in half, and they took the rare opportunity to instead be like, you know what, actually, why don't we'll lower expectations here, and then because we're confident we can exceed them. And I loved that. It just left me kind of flabbergasted, and I went from doing those new missions into jumping back into one of my favorite games of all time, and it felt like it felt, I think, appropriately dated. Like in some ways I missed some of the design elements from what Halo Studios was doing, which is a sentence I never thought I would hear myself say out loud in private company, let alone onto the internet. So I really applaud the team that put those together and built them out and had the idea for them. They feel authentic, and they feel like they're confident and comfortable. And I would be interested in seeing this kind of approach from Halo Studios again. I think their attempt to reinvent the wheel with Infinite worked out, but like if this is the scope that they can operate on more easily and put this out, I would take more Halo campaign like this, which is the last thing I expected to possibly say, to the point where, like, when I was going through campaign evolved, the combat evolved version of the campaign, I was thinking to myself, like, man, I wish they would have taken some bigger swings on changes here. It's pretty faithful, and by pretty faithful I mean it's very faithful, outside of addings in some of the weapons that make sense here and there. Like Marines will also carry SMGs. From Halo 2, Grunts will drop their fuel rod cannons, which feel like the fuel rod cannons from like Halo 3, and they drop like this green fire on the ground. It looks really nice because it's Unreal. And, you know, the sword elites actually drop their swords now, which is cool. But I could have done with more needle rifle showing up. It doesn't show up until keys. But I could have done with it a little bit earlier, especially on Truth and Reconciliation, which had some real weapon problems on Solo Legendary. But like I could have dealt with them doing more of that. They added in the tank forms of the Flood, which I'll get to the Flood in a second. But that feels great. It really adds a lot of variation to. It makes you realize how kind of boring the original version of the Flood were when they don't have a kind of big enemy to throw at you. And they throw those in, and it feels excellent. I kind of wish we could have seen. I know brutes wouldn't make sense in the timeline, really, or there's a good reason why they're not there, but like, I would have been okay if they would have been a little more liberal with the timeline and taken some swings on those levels, added some different enemies into those checkpoints or something like that. Found a way to get drones, and I mean, not drones, everyone hates those, but like, you know what I mean. Get something that was a little bit more, that made it feel like more of a remake in those missions. And then I unlocked Campaign Remix, which is kind of exactly what that is, and is another really cool mode that I would love to spend more time with in the future, now that I'm done with my assignment and I've gotten through the game and everything. Is basically how it works is there's a ton of different skulls that you can unlock in Campaign Evolved that really change things. They're not all negative now. Some of them like let you fly and do other wild stuff or give you unlimited ammo. And basically it allows you to choose a bunch of different skulls, but it forces you to have 3 skulls on for this Campaign Remix playthrough of the game, or individual levels you want to play through. And the 3 skulls do 3 different things, which is that it remixes and randomizes the enemy factions you find in the mission. It remixes and randomizes what weapons spawn on the map and where they spawn. And all of the factions are allied with each other, so there's no faction infighting on levels like 2 Betrayals or 343 Guilty Spark or anything like that, which is awesome. So I dropped into the Pillar of Autumn just to check it out, and Chief wakes up from cryo sleep, and I looked up into the chamber. Instead of a white elite looking down on me, there was an elite combat form from the Flood staring down, just kind of wandering around in the room, which was already unsettling enough. And then when I left the bridge to grab my Magnum on the ground, it was a needle rifle instead. And the grunts that I looked out that were hanging out there were the grunts of the Prophet of Harmony from the prequel missions. They looked different. They had different weapons on them. And when I pushed into the mess hall, they were also, the elites were dressed like they were in the prequel missions as well. So it completely randomizes all of that. I found like random shotguns in places. I found a rocket launcher at somewhere. And then when the Covenant breach through the escape, when they do their reverse breach on the escape hatches, a brute came out and started running at me, and it made it feel super fresh. And I can imagine a world where playing through the game with friends, even after already beating it on legendary, would be a wild new experience, especially as you crank up that difficulty or add in some additional skulls. Doing like a lasso run that also includes campaign remix would be really wild. Wild to see, and I think people are going to do some really weird seed roguelite type stuff with it that's just really cool, and I'm really happy with. Just some overall thoughts here, some positives and negatives that to finish things out here before I go. The main issues I have with the game seem to be entirely due, at least as far as I can tell, from the port to Unreal, from the move to Unreal rather, and a kind of difficulty getting things to fit exactly right into the right places. There are some bugs like enemies falling through the ground, but really there's an issue with the plasma pistol and really just a lot of animation swapping in general, where if you fire the plasma pistol and then swap to the Magnum to get a quick headshot on an elite, which, as anybody who knows who's done Legendary, is the strat in all of these games, but especially Halo 1 when you have that super powerful Magnum, there is a weird delay where it seems like the animation for the plasma pistol has to stop in your inventory, even when you don't have it out, before you can fire. So you have your Magnum, it's out, you have the shot lined up, and you have to wait a couple like fractions of a second to fire, and it just feels really icky and not super great in a lot of spots, which can be really annoying. That also comes into play, by the way, when you're trying to like throw grenades while you're reloading. You can't like cancel the animation to do that like you can in Destiny and in Halo, and that just feels really not great in some situations, and I would love to see them iron that out. Hopefully it's just a bug and they can fix that either in a future release or like via a patch would be ideal, because it made some rooms really difficult to deal with. But nothing made certain rooms more difficult to deal with than the way that they have something seems to be messed up with jackals in this game, shielded jackals specifically. There are beam rifle jackals in this, which is a fun new challenge to deal with, but really, like, the main issue is that if you shoot the little crook of a jackal's arm, where they're aiming out with their plasma pistols, where you can theoretically stagger them so they fall back and then you shoot them in the head and they go away. That doesn't work 95% of the time. You just shoot their hand over and over and over and over with the Magnum, with anything, and they just won't recoil. You can shoot their feet if you can get to them, but they do a pretty good job of covering that up with the shield. The hand is the point there, and it just doesn't work half the time, and there are some bad checkpoints in Assault on the Control Room and Silent Cartographer especially, that are very jackal heavy, that just become very annoying. I got to the place where I just started throwing grenades at them. I wasted so many grenades on jackals in this game, it was crazy. So that's really obnoxious. But those are my main gripes. There are other amazing things that I couldn't really fit into like a very specific place here. Like the Flood have been remade mostly, so they're the Halo 3 Flood now. So like the elite forms have shields, which is really kind of annoying, but also cool. But they don't one-shot melee you like I remember them doing in Combat Evolved. They instead function more as like a zombie horde, as a flood of enemies. And so it feels like the game wants you to run from them in a lot of places. I don't think I've ever run from the Flood before. I just clear them all out, but they feel insurmountable. They feel like a zombie force that is there and just constantly bearing down on you. But because they can hit you and not kill you, you can run from them relatively successfully, which feels much more immersive. It feels much better in the world than when you're just, even as cool as it feels to be Master Chief and to clear a whole room, it just feels great to basically, you know, feel like I got to get out of here, even as such a powerful character. I was really impressed with the Flood reworks. It makes the latter half of the campaign so much better. The library especially is really great. Even though I actually didn't run from them in that level, the way they cleared the library up is excellent. Speaking of like the art style change, this is not the anniversary of edition of Combat Evolved. They did that really ugly like texture overhaul of everything where you could swap between them. It is not like that. It's fully remade. It looks fantastic. All the guns feel excellent to use. And finally, there's just a lot more Master Chief dialogue and cutscene additions. And I'm somebody who is like pretty protective over the idea of like, I don't want to see Master Chief's face. Stop teasing it to me. Don't do it. I like him as silent and quiet, or relatively stoic. I like his personality, but they don't change that while managing to keep him like out there more, get him out there more, talking more, being more of a character, being more of the Chief that we see in later games, but also just more talkative in general. It feels like he has a relationship with these people, and that they're not afraid to make him a character instead of a player stand-in. But he never feels like he moves away from Master Chief as you know him. This isn't Pablo Schreiber Master Chief in the show. He's not taking off his helmet, getting hot all the time. It's not like that. It is a really faithful adaptation that also gives us more, which I really loved. That is really kind of it for my thoughts on Campaign Evolved. I was so unbelievably pleasantly surprised by this game, but especially those bonus missions. The thing I thought I couldn't care less about became one of my favorite experiences this year so far, and something I think I might end up revisiting like as Game of the Year stuff comes around. I'm voting for it for my site and place. I'm really impressed with this remake. I really love it, and it made me miss Halo. Not enough to go back and kind of rerun through some of those old Halo Studios games, but I've missed this series, and I think I've missed it more than I thought I did. And that having this game remind me, and having it remind me through new content from a studio that I have not been a huge fan of in the past, is just such a genuine and beautiful surprise. And I rarely walk away from a game feeling like grateful for it, but I am grateful for Halo Campaign Evolved, and I wish the leaks and rumors about what's happening inside Halo Studios were less bleak, because I now fear that once again I find myself hopeful that Halo might finally be back on track. We'll see. This is also a very different video style for me. I'm much more comfortable doing essayist stuff where I have a very specific script and I don't ramble as much, but I thought I would just jump in here and try something a little bit different. So if you hated this, let me know. Drop a comment below. But also if for reviews and something like that, you just want to hear me chat, rather than do something more edited, I would love to do more stuff like this in the future with Splatoon Raiders maybe, and other things that are coming out here in the future. Mistfall Hunter is coming in any day now. So there's plenty to be talking about. So I am just curious what folks want to see here from me. And if you're like, nope, stick to the edited content, buddy, I've got more of that stuff coming very soon down the pipeline, working on some stuff like that right now. Thank you to everybody who's already subscribed and has checked out my Destiny video and my show with Jake. I really appreciate it. It's been very cool to see the channel grow so quickly. And I've got a lot of cool stuff planned. I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. So thank you very much. Please like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next one.